This video was brought to you by Henson Shaving. Bulgaria has been in the midst of a political crisis since 2021, and last Sunday the country went to the polls for an election, its 7th in the last 3 years, hoping that maybe this time they could break the political deadlock. However, as we'll explain in this video, the results look more likely to prolong the crisis rather than solve it, and could set Bulgaria up for yet another election. If you're interested in elections, you'll love our magazine all about every election that happened in 2024. Find out more about the Too Long Election Special and pick up a copy by clicking the link in the description. So let's start with some important context. Between 2009 and 2021, Bulgaria was governed by the Citizens for European Development of Bulgaria Party, or GERB, led by Boyko Borisov, a former mayor of Sofia. Borisov's GERB won 5 consecutive elections and governed with few interruptions. Now, Borisov originally came to power on an anti-corruption platform, but he and his party ended up with a real reputation for corruption, with corruption still a major problem facing Bulgaria. In fact, above only Hungary, Bulgaria is ranked second lowest among the 27 EU member states in Transparency International's 2023 Corruption Index. Now, anti-corruption campaigners have long been focused on the mafia's involvements in bits of the public sector, including the security services and courts. In fact, in 2020, the country was engulfed in a massive wave of anti-mafia protests, demanding Borisov's resignation, as well as that of the country's chief prosecutor, seen by many Bulgarians as a leading defender of the mafia. Protesters also called for the prosecution of Delian Pevsky, a mafia bigwig and internationally sanctioned oligarch with significant control over the security services, with deep links to Borisov and his GERB party. 2021 came around, and the regularly scheduled parliamentary election in April produced a fragmented parliament, and no coalition was able to be formed. A second election was then held in July, with a similarly inconclusive outcome, setting up a third election in November. This period also marked the rise and fall of new reformist anti-corruption parties, and an increasing political polarization in the country. Now, the first reformist party which emerged from this turbulence was There Is Such a People, or ITN, led by television host and singer Slavi Trifonov. ITN actually came second in the April 2021 election, and then won the July election. Also on the rise was We Continue the Change, or PP, led by 2 Harvard graduates, who won the November 2021 election. PP's leader, Kirill Petkov, managed to form an unstable 4-party coalition featuring ITN, the Bulgarian Socialist Party Alliance, or BSP, and Democratic Bulgaria, who later formed an electoral alliance with PP. However, this unstable coalition only lasted 7 months before ITN withdrew and the government collapsed, teeing up another early election in October 2022. That election brought Borisov back to the fore, as his GERB party emerged as the largest party, but again failed to form a government, so a new election was scheduled for April 2023. The GERB alliance won yet again, but the PP-led alliance came a close second, and eventually the 2 political factions reached an agreement to form a rotating coalition that would hopefully end the years-long political paralysis. For the first 9 months, the PP's Nikolai Denkov would lead as Prime Minister, with GERB's Maria Gabriel serving as deputy, before taking over the premiership after 9 months. Now, this was a pretty big deal, not least because the PP were formed as an anti-Borisov, anti-corruption outfit, and represented the antithesis of GERB. That being said, the 2 parties did find some common ground. First, they both had a Euro-Atlantic orientation, in that they both support European integration, NATO, and supporting Ukraine. The unlikely coalition also managed to pass some important constitutional reforms that, among other things, limited the role of the president in appointing interim caretaker governments, which had obviously become something of a regular feature in Bulgarian politics. Despite this progress, the rotating coalition was not to last, and when it came time for the GERB-led cabinet to take over, the parties were unable to reach a compromise on its composition. The government then collapsed, and new elections were scheduled for June of 2024, the 6th in 3 years. Now, in these elections, GERB remained in first place, but PP fell to third. Rising to second was the Movement for Rights and Freedoms, or DPS, a Turkish minority interest party led by Delian Pevsky, the internationally sanctioned politician who we mentioned earlier. Now, in unsurprising news, attempts to form a government failed, and yet another election was scheduled for October 27th, last Sunday. Once again, Gerb remained in first place, with more than 25% of the vote and 69 seats. PP came second with just under 14% and 37 seats. In a close third with 13% and 35 seats was the ultra-nationalist pro-Russian Revival Party. In fourth, with 11% and 30 seats, was Delyampievsky's DPS faction, which was one of the two factions that emerged following the split of the party. Then the remaining seats were distributed among 4 other parties that received between 4 and 8% of the vote. That means that in total, 9 parties, a record number, were elected to the National Assembly, adding a further complication to the already difficult task of forming a government. But with Gerb finishing first, Borisov once again has the task of trying to work out how to form some kind of majority coalition. He said that he's willing to negotiate with all parties, except for the pro-Russian Revival, in order to try and form a government. Nonetheless, at this point it looks like a really tall order for Borisov, or anyone, to break the political impasse and build a coalition of at least 121 seats, the number required for a majority, as the results really aren't that different from the last election in June. Borisov may want to win the backing of the PP in order to form a Western-oriented coalition, but they'd still need to bring in other parties, and the PP has put anti-corruption laws as a prerequisite for negotiations with Gerb. Plus, the last time the two parties formed a coalition, it collapsed prematurely. Gerb could also look towards Pievsky's DPS faction, but this would cross a red line for other parties who oppose his influence. If Gerb is unable to form a government yet again, then President Radev will pass the mandate to the second and then third place parties. Though, as previous experiences show, they would also likely fail, and Bulgaria could be heading for its 8th election, probably early next year. In the meantime, Bulgaria's protracted political crisis will continue to hold back what is the poorest EU member state. For example, dysfunction has hampered the economic and rule of law reforms necessary to join the Eurozone and Schengen area, and the country even risks missing out on EU funds. The problem is that besides some remarkable political maneuvering and compromise, there isn't an obvious way out of this crisis if elections continue to deliver fragmented parliaments. Now, lawmakers could raise the 4% threshold to enter parliament, meaning that fewer parties will be represented, possibly making it easier to form a coalition. But this wouldn't guarantee its longevity anyway. There have also been some concerns that a prolonged crisis would push disillusioned voters towards more fringe, Russia-friendly parties. But Sunday's election saw the Revival Party actually lose ground, while the Greatness Party failed to win enough votes to secure any seats. Finally, the prolonged crisis also risks fueling even greater disillusionment among the public, though it is a positive sign that voter turnout actually increased 5.5 points to 39%, albeit up from a historic low recorded 4 months earlier. Ultimately then, getting any kind of coalition done is super important, but given the maths, it looks like a tight-run thing. In fact, the only thing tighter is a shave from Henson. If you're sick of the gimmicks that other shaving brands use, the subscriptions, moisturizing strips, lasers, whatever, then you'll want to check out Henson. Because, and here's the dirty secret about the razor industry, even the cheapest dollar store disposable razor will likely give you a reasonably good shave. The challenge is the impact they'll have on your skin. So to protect your skin while shaving, you need to actually support the blade properly. And Henson can provide that quality shave, even with cheap blades, thanks to the Henson razor, which they produce at their aerospace machine shop, which has also produced parts for the ISS, and which perfectly holds blades at a 30-degree angle, and extends them only 0.0013 inches, less than the width of a human hair. In classic TLDR style, that's important for 3 reasons. Firstly, it's way cheaper. Those fancy blade cartridges aren't necessarily designed to provide a better experience for shaving. They're about jacking up prices. Instead, Henson's razor takes standard razor blades that cost just 10 cents each, meaning that while the initial handle might be more expensive, in the long run you'll save a ton of cash. Secondly, it's far better for the environment to be using individual blades rather than joining the 2 billion razor cartridges thrown away every year in the US alone, with Henson's products containing no plastic at all, even in their packaging. Finally, this superb engineering and precise blade tech just provides an incredible shave. If you want to try it out, click the link in the description. Then add a razor and 100 blades to your cart. Once you've done that, use our discount code TLDR at checkout, and you'll get all of those blades totally free.